There is a kind of effort that rarely appears on the surface of a day. It does not change posture or tone of voice, and it often moves quietly beneath conversation and routine. Daily life requires ongoing adjustment. Plans shift, messages request attention, and small decisions gather in steady succession. Each choice may seem minor, though it draws from mental energy all the same. Attention functions as a limited resource. Deciding what to say, what to prioritize, and what to postpone involves subtle evaluation. That evaluation continues quietly, even when visible tasks appear complete. Over time, this background processing becomes constant. Reminders, expectations, and unfinished details remain lightly active beneath awareness. The body may pause, yet the mind continues organizing what has not been resolved. The weight of this ongoing awareness is rarely dramatic. It does not present itself as sudden exhaustion. It feels more like a steady undercurrent that never fully fades. Because the load remains subtle, it is often overlooked. Responsibilities are handled well, and daily structure remains intact. Beneath that steadiness, however, mental effort continues. Future possibilities are considered in advance. Past interactions are reviewed for clarity. Anticipation quietly prepares for what might unfold next. None of this reflects weakness. It reflects care. Care requires foresight, and foresight requires energy. Recognizing that such a load exists begins to change how it is carried. Awareness allows some of the weight to be acknowledged rather than silently sustained. Over time, this hidden effort can begin to feel normal. When attention is constantly engaged, carrying small unfinished details becomes part of the background of living. The mind adapts to that state and treats it as ordinary. Adaptation is quiet. What once required effort slowly becomes familiar. A certain level of mental occupation starts to feel like the default condition rather than an added strain. This is how the hidden load turns into habit. The system learns to remain lightly alert, even when no immediate problem is present. Subtle scanning continues beneath awareness, checking for what might need attention next. Because the process is gradual, it rarely feels dramatic. There is no clear moment when the wait begins. There is simply a steady continuation of engagement that stretches across days and weeks. Responsibility strengthens this pattern. Wanting to respond thoughtfully, to anticipate needs, and to prevent mistakes encourages ongoing mental rehearsal. Care naturally leads to preparation. Preparation requires internal monitoring. Monitoring, when sustained for long periods, becomes automatic. The mind keeps running small evaluations in the background, while conversations unfold and routines move forward. This does not reflect fragility. It reflects commitment. Commitment, when steady and long-lasting, draws from energy in ways that are not always obvious. The difficulty arises when the habit of carrying continues even in moments meant for rest. The body may sit still, though subtle internal activity remains active. Recognizing that this pattern formed gradually helps soften self-judgment. What feels like overthinking is often learned vigilance. Understanding the origin of the load begins to loosen its grip. Responsibility often strengthens the hidden mental load in subtle ways. When care becomes part of identity, attention naturally extends beyond the present moment. The mind begins to look ahead, preparing for what might require adjustment. This forward scanning does not always feel like strain. It can feel thoughtful, even protective. Anticipating potential issues provides a sense of stability. Being prepared offers reassurance. Over time, that preparation becomes continuous. The system learns to stay lightly alert, even in calm conditions. Internal monitoring continues beneath conversation, work, and routine. People who value reliability tend to hold more details internally. Remembering appointments, anticipating needs, and reviewing interactions become habits shaped by intention. The desire to do things well encourages sustained awareness. Sustained awareness draws from energy gradually rather than abruptly. Because the withdrawal is slow, it rarely feels urgent. The load increases in small increments that are easy to overlook. This pattern often feels justified. Monitoring seems responsible. Revisiting conversations feels considerate. Thinking ahead appears efficient. The challenge emerges when constant evaluation no longer serves a clear purpose. The mind continues rehearsing possibilities even when no action is required. In those moments, the hidden load shifts from helpful to heavy. The shift remains subtle, though its effect accumulates over time. Understanding this transition softens self-criticism. The intention behind the pattern was care, not weakness. Recognizing that intention makes it easier to approach the load with compassion rather than correction. The hidden mental load often continues even when the visible part of the day slows down. Activity may decrease, conversations may end, and the environment may grow quieter, though the internal process does not immediately follow that shift. The mind tends to maintain the rhythm it practiced throughout the day. When attention has been continuously engaged, that engagement does not disappear the moment external tasks stop. Instead, it often continues quietly in the background. Thought may begin to review earlier moments. A conversation might return briefly, or a small decision may appear again for reconsideration. These reflections rarely arrive with urgency. They simply remain present in a gentle and persistent way. Because this movement is subtle, it can be mistaken for ordinary tiredness. The mind is not necessarily searching for problems. It is completing a process that began while attention was directed elsewhere. During busy hours, many impressions are set aside so that immediate responsibilities can be handled. When space finally appears, the system uses that opening to organize what was postponed. This process reflects care and attentiveness rather than weakness. The same awareness that supports thoughtful action during the day continues to operate when the environment becomes still. Understanding this pattern changes how the experience is interpreted. What feels like unnecessary thinking is often the mind finishing a quiet form of organization. When this becomes clear, the hidden load begins to feel less personal and less confusing. The mind is not working against rest. It is simply completing what the day left unfinished. Rest does not always quiet the mind immediately. When the pace of the day slows, attention finally finds space that was unavailable during busy hours. That space allows thoughts to continue processes that began earlier. During active moments, many impressions are set aside so that responsibilities can be handled smoothly. Conversations move forward, decisions are made, and tasks receive priority. The mind quietly postpones certain reflections in order to keep the day functioning. When activity decreases, those postponed reflections may return. A brief exchange from earlier might appear again in memory. A small choice may invite reconsideration. These thoughts usually arrive without urgency. They simply complete a process that had been paused. Trying to force the mind into silence can sometimes make the experience feel stronger. The act of pushing thoughts away draws attention toward them. Attention gives the impression that thinking has increased, even when the content remains similar. Allowing thoughts to move through awareness often changes their rhythm. Without resistance, many reflections pass naturally after a short moment of consideration. The mind does not always require correction. It often needs only enough space to finish organizing what was left open. Understanding this tendency softens frustration. Continuous thinking during quiet moments is not necessarily a sign that something is wrong. It often reflects the mind completing unfinished organization. When this process is recognized, the hidden mental load becomes easier to observe. Instead of feeling like a problem to eliminate, it can be understood as a pattern that developed through attention and responsibility. Seeing the pattern clearly begins to loosen its hold. Over time, the hidden mental load can begin to feel like a normal part of everyday awareness. When attention remains engaged for long periods, a certain level of internal activity becomes familiar. The mind adapts to that condition and gradually treats it as ordinary. Adaptation rarely happens in a noticeable way. What once required effort slowly blends into routine. A steady background of monitoring and reflection begins to feel like the natural state of thinking. This shift occurs because the mind is designed to learn patterns. When a behavior repeats often enough, the system assumes that the pattern serves a useful purpose. Quiet vigilance therefore continues, even during moments that do not require it. Because the change develops gradually, it can be difficult to recognize. There is no clear moment when the mental load first appeared. Instead, it grows through small repetitions that accumulate across days and weeks. Responsibility reinforces this process. Wanting to respond thoughtfully, to anticipate needs, and to avoid mistakes encourages ongoing reflection. Care naturally leads to preparation, and preparation invites continued awareness. With time, that awareness operates almost automatically. The mind reviews possibilities, recalls details, and considers outcomes, even when no immediate decision is necessary. None of this reflects weakness or fragility. It reflects commitment and attention. Those qualities often support reliability and thoughtful action throughout the day. The difficulty arises only when the pattern continues without pause. Moments meant for rest can still carry traces of the same quiet activity. Recognizing how naturally this habit formed helps soften judgment. The hidden load developed through intention, not failure. Seeing the pattern clearly becomes the first step toward carrying it differently. The hidden mental load often continues into moments that were meant for rest. When the day slows and external demands decrease, internal activity may still remain quietly active. The mind tends to maintain the rhythm it practiced throughout the day. If attention has been engaged for many hours, it does not immediately release that pattern. The system continues reviewing small details, recalling conversations, or considering possibilities that were set aside earlier. This continuation does not usually feel dramatic. Thoughts appear in a calm and steady way, often returning to small matters that seemed unimportant during the day. The mind uses available space to complete what was postponed. During busy hours, many impressions are briefly stored so that immediate responsibilities can be handled efficiently. When activity decreases, those impressions naturally return for quiet organization. Because this process happens during rest, it can feel confusing. The body may be sitting quietly while the mind continues its work. The contrast between stillness and internal movement can make thinking appear stronger than it truly is. In reality, the mind is not creating new pressure. It is finishing small tasks that had been paused earlier. Conversations are reviewed, decisions are reconsidered, and details are arranged into a clearer structure. Understanding this pattern changes how the experience is interpreted. What feels like unnecessary thinking is often the mind completing unfinished organization. When the process is allowed to unfold without resistance, many of these reflections settle naturally. The system gradually returns to a quieter rhythm once its small tasks are complete. Recognizing this tendency reduces frustration. The mind is not working against rest. It is simply completing what the day left open. Over time, the hidden mental load can begin to influence how energy is experienced throughout the day. The change often appears gradually rather than suddenly. A sense of mental heaviness may develop even when the day itself does not seem unusually demanding. Because the effort behind the load is subtle, the resulting fatigue can feel difficult to explain. Tasks may still be completed. Conversations may still feel normal, and routines may continue without interruption. Beneath that steady surface, however, attention has been working continuously. Sustained attention requires energy, even when the activity remains quiet. Reviewing possibilities, remembering details, and preparing for future situations all draw from the same limited mental resources. When this pattern repeats across many days, the mind has fewer moments to fully reset. The system continues operating in a state of gentle engagement. That engagement may feel productive during the day, though it gradually reduces the depth of rest that follows. Fatigue in this situation rarely appears as dramatic exhaustion. It often shows up as a sense that clarity feels slightly thinner, or that focus requires a little more effort than before. Recognizing this pattern can change how that fatigue is interpreted. The tiredness is not necessarily a lack of strength or motivation. It often reflects the quiet cost of sustained awareness. Understanding this connection makes the hidden load easier to approach with patience. The mind has simply been working in the background for longer than it was designed to do without pause. The hidden mental load is easy to miss because it blends into normal functioning. When tasks are handled and responsibilities are met, the mind assumes that everything is fine. The quiet effort running underneath is treated as part of ordinary life. Familiar patterns rarely stand out. A steady habit of checking, anticipating, and refining can feel like common sense rather than extra work. The mind becomes used to carrying small, unfinished details in the background, and that background activity stops feeling noticeable. Because the load is not dramatic, it is often interpreted as personality. Being thoughtful can appear as simply being responsible. Being prepared can appear as simply being organized. The line between care and continuous monitoring becomes difficult to see. The day also provides distraction. Movement, conversations, and short deadlines keep attention pointed outward. Internal effort continues, though it is less visible when the environment stays active. When quiet finally arrives, the contrast makes the inner activity easier to notice. Thoughts feel louder, not because they suddenly increased, but because the background became still. Understanding this helps reduce self-judgment. The hidden load is not a flaw that appeared overnight. It is a pattern that became familiar through repetition. Seeing the pattern clearly is a turning point. Once it is recognized, it becomes possible to carry it with more awareness and less pressure. When the hidden mental load becomes visible, the first reaction is often a desire to remove it quickly. The idea of carrying less inside the mind feels appealing. and it can seem natural to try to silence the thinking that keeps returning. Trying to stop thoughts directly can create another layer of effort. Attention moves toward the activity that is being controlled, and that attention keeps the mind engaged with the same process. Instead of quieting the experience, the effort can make thinking feel more noticeable. The mind rarely changes direction through force. Patterns that formed gradually tend to soften through gradual change as well. When the system is asked to shift too abruptly, it usually returns to the habits it already understands. A gentler approach begins with observation. Thoughts can appear and move through awareness without immediately becoming tasks that require solutions. Many reflections pass naturally when they are not treated as problems that must be solved. This small shift creates distance between awareness and mental activity. The mind continues moving, though the sense of pressure begins to decrease. Over time, that distance allows the hidden load to feel lighter. Thoughts may still arrive, though they no longer carry the same weight of responsibility. Change does not require dramatic effort. Quiet adjustments in how attention relates to thought often create the most stable shifts. When the hidden load begins to soften, the change often feels quiet and gradual. The mind still notices details, though the sense of constant urgency begins to loosen. Thoughts continue to appear, though they move with slightly more space around them. This shift does not remove responsibility. Daily life still asks for attention, decisions, and care. What changes is the way attention holds those demands. The mind learns that every thought does not require immediate resolution. At first, the difference can feel subtle. A concern may appear, and instead of expanding into a long chain of analysis, it passes through awareness more gently. The mind registers the thought, understands its presence, and allows it to settle without building further tension around it. Over time, this new rhythm becomes more familiar. Mental activity continues, though the background pressure slowly decreases. Awareness begins to recognize that attention can move between engagement and rest without losing stability. This balance allows thinking to return to its original role. Reflection becomes a tool rather than a constant obligation. When reflection is needed, the mind engages clearly. When it is not needed, attention can remain quietly present. In that space, the hidden load no longer defines the entire inner landscape. Thoughts remain part of experience, though they no longer carry the same weight. When the hidden mental load begins to settle, the change rarely feels dramatic. Life continues moving with the same responsibilities, conversations, and decisions that filled earlier days. What shifts is the way the mind relates to all of it. Attention gradually discovers that not every detail needs to remain active in the background. Some thoughts can simply appear, be noticed, and then fade without being carried further. This quiet permission creates a small opening inside the experience of thinking. Within that opening, mental activity starts to feel less crowded. Thoughts still move through awareness, though they no longer press forward with the same urgency. Reflection becomes something that happens when needed, rather than something that continues without pause. Daily life still contains many small demands. Messages arrive, plans adjust, and responsibilities continue asking for care. None of these disappear. What changes is the sense that the mind must hold everything all the time. Over time, awareness becomes more comfortable with moments of mental spaciousness. Silence inside the mind no longer feels incomplete. Stillness begins to feel natural again, even when thoughts continue to move gently in the background. The hidden load does not vanish entirely. Some degree of thinking always remains part of being human. What softens is the constant pressure to keep every possibility under control. When that pressure loosens, a quieter form of balance returns. The mind continues doing its work, though it no longer needs to carry the entire weight of every detail. In that quiet shift, the mind remembers something simple. Not every thought needs to be carried, and not every moment requires effort.